Welcome to the Elevate Your Equity podcast, where we, as married busy professionals, leverage real estate investing to unlock the 3+1 degrees of freedom: health, location, time, and financial.
Today, we've got none other than Mr. Penny Levinsky. How are you, Penny?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Derek. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, great to have you here, man. For those who don't know Penny is a real estate entrepreneur, passionate about building wealth through real estate, and he's involved with single-family rentals, multifamily syndications, and most recently, short-term rentals. So quite a broad stroke there on the residential sector. Penny is also hosts the Real Estate Ventures podcast, a show geared to help newbies break into the real estate world. That's awesome, Penny. So glad to have you on the show today. And where we'd like to start usually with most of our guests is, how did you start investing in real estate, and kind of walk us through your journey while you were getting going?
Sure, absolutely. So I was 25 when I started, when I got bit by the bug, so to speak. And I work in a family business, and we sell building supplies and janitorial supplies with my dad and my brother. And, it's a real family mom and pop shop. And it's the kind of place where everybody wears a lot of hats. So I was 25, and that day I was wearing the human resources hat, and I was doing some interviews. We were looking for like a starter sales position, not necessarily a high salary, a real starter position. And we had a whole bunch of people come in for interviews. This is when people still wanted to work in the US, unlike today. A little bit harder to find employees today. But so we had a whole bunch of interviews, and we had this one person that came in that was, I don't know exact age, but probably in their 60s. And he was telling us how he worked at this job for like a really, really long time. And he was really loyal to them, and it was going so well, and he kept climbing the ladder. And then all of a sudden one day, like, he got fired, he got laid off. And what he realized was, at that age, it was really difficult to find a new opportunity, because a lot of employers were not interested in hiring somebody at that age and having to train them in and work with somebody that's already working for that many years, when they have the option to hire somebody straight out of college. So he came and interviewed by us, and then he was telling me this story. And honestly, it wasn't a good fit for us either. Not really even because of his age, it just wasn't a great fit. But that conversation with him really got me thinking. And it was like, how could somebody that has done so well their entire life and done all the right things, right? Working for a company and, showing up 9 to 5, giving it his blood, sweat, and tears, end up in a position like this where he's in his 60s, and now he's got to interview for a job like this. Like, something is not right. And like, if he can't retire at this stage, or he can't get a better job, there's something wrong with the system, because it's not just him. There's so many people doing this. And then I started thinking, I don't want to be in that position. Well, I'm a little bit different because I work for a family business, and I have a little bit more of a guarantee that my dad won't fire me. But still, the same concept applies, that there are things that we can do to sort of pad ourselves and give us a little bit of an insurance policy to not end up in a position like that, where you're just reliant on your employer. And if he says you're out one day, you're not going to be totally screwed. So at that point, I started looking into, what are some ways that I can create some income streams outside of my 9 to 5. Very quickly stumbled upon BiggerPockets and real estate and rental properties. And it was not too long after that when I bought my first single family residential rental in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
I got it. I see. So when you were doing your research, and by the way, thank you for that very interesting story that kind of gave you the spark to be like, I got to do something different here. Very applicable. And one thing I want to also applaud you on too is, when you're growing up and you listened to that guy, you actually really listened to what he had to say, right? Even though it didn't work out for him coming on board. I have to say that for someone who is in their mid 20s or mid or early 20s and hearing that story, I'll be honest, I don't think that I would have picked up on that. I really don't. And so it's very interesting that you did. And so I think that is something that the listeners can really take away, because if they're in situations like this, it's all about awareness and understanding other people. And the sooner you can do that, the better and quicker you're going to run at this real estate investing business. Anyway, just had to have that aside, because
and it's true. And the first thing, Derek, that I realized during this conversation was, I just kept on thinking, this is so sad. This is so sad. This is so sad. And then the next thing that crossed my mind was how does one make sure that like more people don't end up in a situation like this? Because this is really sad. And like, that's kind of like how, how it evolved.
Yeah, absolutely. That would probably hit me too, but I still wouldn't have the insight to be like, well, how can I help other people or even help
Right.
myself to be able to escape that? And so you picked up your first single family rental. Where did the real estate investing thing come in? Because you mentioned that there was some sort of pain that came with, having to rely on a single employer for the rest of your life. But how did we go from there to investing in real estate? Was it personal development? Were you talking with some other folks who've done it before? Like, where did you get that inspiration?
So I was really looking for something that would be like a passive income stream, or even maybe not so passive, but more of an income stream, something that I can have on the side besides my 9 to 5. And I was looking online, and there's so many gurus that are happy to take your money, and there's so many channels out there that are just telling you how wealthy you could become within the next 30 days and all that stuff. And I'm not exactly entirely sure why or what it was, but I do remember that I did stumble upon Bigger Pockets pretty quickly. And I have to give a lot of credit to Brandon Turner and Josh Dorkin. They were doing the podcast back then. And they did such a good job of explaining to the listeners and to myself the value of passive income and growing your net worth through owning real estate. Like, I think that was one thing that also clicked. It's like, when you buy a property with leverage in a good area, your net worth pretty much just keeps climbing. Like, it just keeps going up, and you're not even doing anything. Like, the tenant is paying the mortgage for you. It's in a good area, so it's going up in value. It's appreciating. And then when you go to sell the property in 5 or 10 years, like, your net worth is a whole lot higher than it was when you started. And you didn't even have to, like, it's not even that much work. It just made a lot of sense to me, and they did a really good job of explaining that.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like you just did a systematic search. You found these gurus that were on the podcast. Actually, I can't call them gurus because you're not paying them very much. So you're not paying
Right.
them anything. You're just listening to their conversations, which is awesome. And I highly recommend that people who are looking to do what you're doing probably go down that same path as well. It always doesn't hurt to get educated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, like, I did take out a membership to Bigger Pockets. So maybe they are gurus. They did get my money a little bit.
Maybe.
And then the forums are great. The podcasts are great. Like, it's such a good platform. And I know so many people say this, that like Bigger Pockets was their first, like, real mentor sort of education step. Like, for me, like, it was a really, really big part in the beginning. Any stupid question that I was embarrassed to ask anyone, I would just throw it up on the forums. 99% of those people don't know me anyways, and they would really happily answer all of my really dumb beginner questions, but they really weren't that dumb. They were just, I didn't know, I'm brand new, newbie, and I really just had no idea like what an ROI was,
Absolutely. And a bonus side effect of all of that, Penny, is I got to, at least when I was doing the same thing, I got to find out people who I maybe want to work with in the future. Like, I started triangulating around certain people who like were doing some cool stuff back in the day. Because right now it's kind of a mixed bag. Like, anyone can go in and comment, and so it's more like a social network than anything. But back
Right.
then, before 2020, it was, in my mind at least, you could find really good people, and you still can. You just have to do a little bit more extra work to try to dig down and find someone that says stuff that you like, and then try to build a relationship with them that way, add value to them, and get your big break coming into the investment industry. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And then my first failed partnership, but my first partnership was from Bigger Pockets. Like, there was a local meetup. I met someone there. We decided we're going to do Burr together. And that didn't last very long. But yeah, that was my first real estate partnership. It did come from Bigger Pockets, actually. It's funny you say that.
Well, there you go. I mean, even that is experience in itself. So awesome. So let's move on. You currently have a job, right? And what I wanted to ask you is, as a real estate investor side hustler, how are you managing your time between real estate and the employment that you do? Like, what does your daily routines look like? Just give us a day into the life of Penny Lubinsky.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to start with a concept first that's going to tie into this. And it's basically that I believe that everyone has some sort of unfair advantage. Everyone has something going for them. Some people have, money, some people have time, some people have other resources that most other investors don't have. And for me, something that has been a huge unfair advantage is that my dad has really been good to me. So he's my employer, he's my boss, and he has allowed me to work and create sort of my own schedule around his work and sometimes in his work, that allows me to be able to pursue my real estate. So when a deal comes up, like we have this sort of plan that I will just take time off of the 9 to 5, I'll work on the deal, and then at the end of the week, I'll just take whatever hours I worked on that deal, I'll just take it off my paycheck. And so it's a beautiful arrangement. And like, I don't know if everybody's that lucky to have a boss that would do that for them. But I know I do. And for me, that's a huge plus. And like, it really helped me be able to simultaneously like work on multiple things. I can do the 9 to 5, but I don't have to worry about not having time for real estate, because whenever something pressing comes up, I can work on it during 9 to 5. Now, most of the real estate I do try to get in around the 9 to 5 during weekends or later at night. But if something is pressing and if some documents need to get in today, then I can go ahead and do that. I have that luxury. So definitely, like, it's been a challenge, like balancing the schedule, as well as just being like aware of like, the timelines and all that stuff. But definitely like having that luxury has been like really big for me as well.
Oh yeah, that sounds like it comes in handy for sure. And next question I wanted to ask you was, it sounds like you have walked the walk from single family to multifamily. Now it sounds like you're shifting a lot of your focus into short-term rentals. Can you talk us through why you're making those shifts right now so rapidly? Because, when I first met you, it was all multifamily. I think you were transitioning away from single family, and that was probably a couple of years ago. So walk us through like what your line of thinking is with doing that, and how maybe you can have other investors think about maybe pivoting or shifting their strategies too.
Yeah, sure. So the first deal was a single family rental, as I mentioned. That was in Pennsylvania. And I'm not really doing those anymore. Like, I'm not doing a regular residential single family rental anymore, just because of scalability. I find like you're better off doing either larger deals or even a single family. But if you do a short-term rental, that'll be more lucrative. It makes it more, worth it. But to try to kind of walk you through the transition, like, I did a single family rental that went really well. And then I was like, how do we do this, but bigger and better? And really just naturally, like the idea that like the path that made sense was to go into multifamily. And it took me actually a really, really long time to go and lock in the first multifamily. Underwrote a lot of deals and finally got one in Houston, Texas. And that deal's doing well too. But then I started realizing that just based on like the market conditions and the cap rates kind of going where they're going, and it wasn't how do I say this? Like, it wasn't as ripe of a market as it was a few years ago. And so naturally, I just started looking for other asset classes that were cash flowing a little bit more in this time. And then I met my now partner, and like we basically discovered short-term rental and hospitality a little bit more. So yeah, now the main focus is short-term rentals. I still like multifamily. I always want to be in multifamily, but right now the main focus, just based on like where the market is, it's just like the path of least resistance is, I find, at least for myself, is short-term rentals, and they cash flow pretty nicely too. So that was kind of like how that worked. But to answer your question, like, I would like it, like going forward, like I definitely would like to be involved in both, like have a combination of short-term rentals and multifamily. I think they complement each other really well. I think what one lacks, the other one has, and like, the cash flow of short-term rentals will balance out the lack of cash flow, at least in today's market in multifamily.
Right.
But the stability in multifamily will balance out the volatility and seasonality of the short-term rentals. So I kind of like both paths. We actually just passed up on a 20 unit in St. Pete this week, but at the same time we're pursuing a short-term rental portfolio. So I'm really pursuing both, but if I had to say like which one my main focus, it'd be short-term rentals right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too. And just for clarification, are you buying locally too? Are you buying in your neck of the woods also?
No, actually, I've never
Okay.
bought anything in New York. Yeah, I live in New York. It's really difficult to buy things here. I don't have the deep pockets for it, and I've never bought anything. No.
Yeah, no, completely understand. I think that the Airbnb thing is a very interesting play, and a lot of people have been doing very well with it. So if you're dedicated to the space of being, in the hospitality business, and also okay with going back to single family rentals, you could make a killing from this market right now. And honestly, like with people like me, Penny, there are people that just are constant Airbnb hoppers, right? They'll hop from place to place. And so I think that there's a place in the long-term portfolio for some of these short-term rentals, believe it or not. That's just my opinion on how things are working out now.
Absolutely. And being that you travel so much, I'm going to take this opportunity to actually ask you a question. Like when you're looking for a short-term rental in a market, what makes you choose? Because I know you stayed in a heck of a ton of them. What makes you choose
Yeah.
one over the other? I'm curious.
Yeah. So like, because of my situation, I like to find places that offer weekly or monthly discounts. Like that's a big thing for me. But amenities, being close to amenities, whether it's either nature or the downtown areas, is super important. I think having modern finishes and just basically being a clean place is some of it. I'll be honest, like my wife is the one that picks a lot of these because she's way better than I am at doing it. But having air conditioning, furniture in the place that just feels like home for us is super important. And again, I think that's the number one thing. And then pricing and being able to offer discounts for weekly and monthly type rentals, you'll get more of our business that way. That's what I would say. So I think those are that's what I would prioritize. The amenities thing is okay. I'd call that maybe third on my priority list because
Okay.
we can drive and we'll be working anyway. That's just who we are, is we have to work in the place. So for us as digital nomads, we have to have a comfortable place to live, strong internet connection, and enough furniture for us to be able to arrange so that we can make our office spaces comfortable, so to speak.
Got it. I appreciate that. Actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
No worries. That's very cool. I've never been asked a question in my own podcast. It's really neat.
No,
All right.
no.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. New item. Okay, let's move on. So let's talk a little bit about a story about doing mailers back in the day. Can you tell us about that? Like, I'm really intrigued by what you meant by that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so before, no, was it before? No, it was right after I bought the single family in Pennsylvania. I hadn't right away made the shift to multifamily. The plan initially was to go and buy more single families. And then the plan was, depending on what the property needed, I would either try and rent it or maybe fix and flip it. That was kind of like the plan after that first deal. And so I figured that one of the best approaches, at least everyone was talking about at the time, was mailers. Everyone was doing so well with the mailers. So I went and started doing mailers, and I sent out a heck of a ton of mailers. And then what I realized was I made a mistake, and this mistake should never be made. And I'll explain later why. I left instead of the return address on the letters, instead of it being a PO box, I by mistake left my home address.
Oh, no.
And just so you understand, like the people that you're mailing to are people that are about to get evicted. They're people that are going through a crisis, and they're people that are not necessarily the most wholesome people. Some are good people that just fell on hard times, but other people are people that would actually come and kill you. And I learned this the hard way because this guy gets on the phone and he says my name, and he's like, Penny. I don't remember exactly the words, but he read my address. He's like 12, whatever. I'm not going to say it right now on the podcast, but he's like 12, whatever. Is that where you live? I'm like, no. Why would you think that? He's like, yes, it is. He's like, I'm going to come and get you. He's like, you sent me a letter. He's like, everyone's been harassing me. I'm going to teach you a lesson. I'm going to bring my boys and we're going to come and get you. And like, honestly, like for the next week, I barely left my house. Like every time I did, I like looked like 3 times, like each way, just to make sure there's no like.
Oh my God.
car in any driveway or something, and I always looked over my shoulder, and he had a really scary voice, sounded like an older guy, but still scary nonetheless. And that story basically scared me away from doing mailers, even though there was a simple solution. I could have just not put my home address after that, but I that really traumatized me, and I was like, okay, maybe we'll move to multifamily or something like that. But
I love that, man. Wow, what a story, man. I know that, like, looking back, it probably wasn't so funny back then, but I think going forward, you can look back at this as a learning lesson, and even maybe something that's kind of cute that you can tell as a story, which I definitely enjoyed listening to that. But I can respect it, because there is a level of hustle that you want to bring to the table, because you had just gotten your first single family property, and now you were trying to find a way to scale up, right? And so this was the logical step that BiggerPockets and a lot of people were telling you to do. So I got to applaud you on taking the action there. So thank you for sharing that very, very cool story, and serious lesson for those out there who are going to do mailers or even direct dials or texting, because you may end up getting some of the same backlash, right? So
yeah, and do keep in mind, like what I said earlier, like the people that you're mailing to are people in distress. Like these people are frustrated. They're going through some major crisis in their life, and they're not exactly excited to get mailers from you. A lot of them are not, at least. And the last thing you want to do is tell them exactly where you live so that they can track you and come and get you. So definitely
yeah.
think on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Good advice. All right. So one thing I wanted to ask was regarding family office as well. For family office, there's, it takes a connection like what you have, which is a family connection, to be able to find a family office and work for it. So first, maybe I can ask you in general, what is a family office? And then secondly, how would you suggest people maybe approach a family office or try to find one, if you have any insight there?
That's a good question. There's one family office that I have a relationship with. It wasn't something that I built through real estate. It just happens to be there's a family office that I know for years. Oh, and I'll just go back and I'll explain, like, my interpretation of a family office. It's basically just a family that has a lot of money, and they're looking to invest in, I guess, real estate deals. And but obviously they have their criteria. You have to understand that they see a lot of opportunities, they see a lot of deals, and you just need to really understand, like, as good as possible, like, who they are, what they're looking for, because just driving them crazy, throwing them deals all over the place is not exactly like probably won't get you very far. But yeah, and in my case, like, there's a couple. There's one that my best relationship with the closest family office that I know, that we're really close family friends. I've known them for maybe 10 years or something like that, and the relationship was built like far before I was in real estate or investing in real estate. So I can't really speak to how to develop relationships with family offices. In my situation, the one that I do have, the best one that I do have is more just like built organically, like before the real estate. So sorry if I can't shed too much light on that.
No, that's okay. That's all right. That confirms some of the answers that I've been getting also, is that it is very difficult to do that. I mean, and for good reason. It takes a long time to build that trust. One thing that I've suggested that maybe works out is, go to some of the things that they support, right? And just try to get in front of them as much as you can, like, volunteer where they volunteer, go to the things that they support. And it has to be genuine. You can't obviously go out of your way and just, have that be your primary objective. I think you really have to have a fit, and I think that you kind of stumble into these things more than other. At least that's what I've come across with some investors who have done something like this, is they've built those relationships over time. It started outside of real estate first and then went into business afterwards. So
yeah, I mean, those are
yeah.
the best ones, and I don't know if everyone has that in their life, but you have to just like understand, like, they have so much deal flow. They have people coming over to them. Everybody knows they have money. Everybody knows that, generally these family offices are pretty well known. And especially if you live in a community like mine, everyone knows who the wealthy people are. So, there's a dime a dozen people throwing deals on a regular basis. So it really, I think what does help for me personally, is not throwing everything at them, just really knowing, what pretty crystal clear, like what their criteria is, what they will go for, what they won't go for, and just try to like prove to them that you're actually serious about like finding them good opportunities, because you're not going to be wasting their time just like, you know, hundreds of other people are. And you actually like, you know what they're looking for. And like this way, when you do present something, they'll actually take it more seriously because they know that you put in the time and the effort to actually review the deal, and you determine like that it is up their alley and it's something that they would normally bite on, I would say.
Yeah, excellent. Love it. So we are a big proponent of mindset here, right, on Elevate Your Equity podcast. And I want you to help explain to the audience how your mindset has changed over the years since you started investing in real estate from the beginning.
Okay, so I would say honestly, the biggest thing that has helped me do some successful deals, and especially more recently, has been, like you said, the mindset. And the biggest aspect of that is overcoming challenges. So in my opinion, and like, I don't know if this is just my opinion or everyone, you get into real estate, especially me, like I was really young. And I think the younger you are, the less you realize like how many obstacles you're going to face just on a regular basis. And you see so many people, just like the obstacle like hits them and then they just kind of like quit, they just stop, they roll over and die. I really think like the biggest key to like being successful in this business is just constantly learning how to overcome challenges. And like it'll be a different challenge each time, but the challenges will be real, and they're going to come up on a constant basis. And like being like able to be flexible with that and being able to be creative and persistent to continuously like work through these challenges. Like, I think for me, that has been the biggest thing. So like in the beginning of my career, like the first couple challenges that came up in my real estate life, like I didn't know that that was normal. Like I didn't know that, like, I'll just give you an example. Like the first, like right as I was getting into multifamily, someone offered me to get into a multifamily deal, and all I needed to do was like raise, I don't remember, it was like 400,000 or 500,000. That was all they asked of me. And like at the time, like I thought like, oh, that should be easy, like 400,000 or 500,000 in my community, easy pickles. Like I'll just tell you, like I raised $0.00 for that. And so for me, that was a huge obstacle. Like in my like opinion, like I had already started working on my list, my investor list, and like I thought like that would be easy. That was a huge, like that was really, you know, heartbreaking, like to see like, oh my gosh, like nothing, like zero, no bites. And then I realized like, you know, that was an obstacle that I faced. I was a little bit raw. My presentation wasn't well. I didn't, you know, wasn't so smooth. I didn't really know the deal, you know, enough to be able to present it to the investors. You know, so I learned from them. I learned what my investors were looking for. I learned how to present the deal better. And like, I don't know, that was just one example, but like I could have, in an alternate universe, I would have, you know, faced that adversity and then like rolled over and quit and said, okay, real estate's not for me. This is too hard. Let's do something else. But I didn't. And like, I'm really happy that I didn't. And just, and that's just like one like silly little thing, but like constantly on a daily basis, I'm sure you can attest to this as well. Like there's just so many facets to this business. There's so many different moving parts. And like in each moving part, there can be challenges on a daily basis. So they're just like constantly navigating through the challenges. I think that's something that is probably for me at least, like I would say that's the biggest thing that has led to like me doing deals successfully.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that. That's great. So I wanted to end with one last question about what it is that is in your 3-year vision. You know, we've been finding that 1 year is too short and 5 years is probably too long. So 3 years is right within the sweet spot of what we can visually as humans grasp what our future to be and what our future self would be like. So given that context, what do you think your 3-year vision is, or do you have one? Or you know, just, I don't mean to put you on the spot right now, but I'm curious what that is for Penny.
No, that's good, because like I actually don't have one, but by you asking me, you're forcing me to kind of like come up with one, which is great. So I'm happy.
Yeah, well, let's do it.
Yeah, so I don't have it like, you know, I don't have it like down on in my notepad like all official, but for me it's getting into more multifamily deals actively, getting into more short-term rental deals actively. And then I would certainly hope, and this has been like kind of my mindset all along, I want to start investing more passively. So the more money that I make from active income, I want to start rolling that into passive investments, because ultimately, like, really what I'm looking for is freedom. Like, I'm not, that's really my biggest goal. Like, I want to create like financial freedom. And I feel like there's really nothing like a passive investment. Like, you're just like, you're really just making money like by doing nothing, essentially. But I do think that a good idea is to work to do active deals first to create some sort of income, to create some cash flow, to then be able to, for me, to then be able to roll into passive investments. And then I don't know if that's exactly 3 years down the road, but I certainly hope like with 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, eventually, like, I could have a nice amount of passive income to be able to support my lifestyle and just be able to have more freedom and more time to do the things I'm most passionate about. But I guess that would be my answer. But that was totally on the wing. I just winged
that. Awesome. Well, I love that. One thing that I have to share with you is that, we kind of were looking at the same thing. We wanted to become, passive investors on our own. But what we discovered, at least my wife and I, is that there's actually 3 degrees of freedom, financial freedom. And, it's going to seem obvious as soon as we tell you, but there's a location freedom, there's a time freedom, and then there's financial. And what was really funny is that we kind of unlocked our degrees of freedom in 3 different degrees. So we first started with the location one because we were able to say, okay, well, our job allowed us to work remote. That was thanks to COVID, at least for that time period, right? We were able to be remote. And then secondly, there was the time freedom, which I didn't quite have until I left my job. The time freedom is the ability to choose when you work and when you don't work. And then the financial, ironically enough, Benny, like we have a bunch of JVs and we have a whole bunch of, apartment buildings that we've been getting into ever since, the early 2020s and late 2010s. And when I was living in the Bay Area, we did not have enough to become financially free. But as soon as we started to travel around, our expenses plummeted because we didn't have a huge mortgage to pay. We didn't have the expense of California gasoline, the expense of California food costs, like all of that stuff. So our cost of living dropped, which meant that we had the ability to live almost anywhere in the world, right? With our passive income. And so in a way, I would say you have location freedom if you could do your job from anywhere. Maybe that's not the case. You do have time freedom right now because I know you can set the hours more or less, and then you're working on your financials. So I think, you may be further along than you think to your goal. So I have no doubt in my mind that you'll be able to get there in 3 years.
That's cool. And I really like the way like you have it broken down into those 3 categories, because you're right. Like, it really isn't just one big picture. Like, there really are these, different aspects of it. Yeah, it's a good way to, it's a really cool way to look at it. And it makes me feel like I'm further along than I initially thought.
You are.
Yeah. And I have to say, like, getting up and like moving out of the Bay Area, that's such a smart move to be able to like accelerate that path. Because like whenever you would have gotten there just by moving out and like cutting out all those huge expenses by living there, like you just accelerated that like tremendously. Like it was such a smart, like a weird move on your end. So
yeah.
Kudos to you, credit.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And I think, one last thing I'm going to say, just as unsolicited advice on the podcast here, just from what I've been hearing, you have everything you need right now. If you can swing it with your work, to just try what your life would be like if you were financially free, just give it a shot. Like, obviously you'll have to make some concessions. You'll have to work 10, 20 hours a week, but most likely you could get a lot of that done with the flexibility you have from your place in Portugal, or from your place in Greece, or from your place in Israel, which is a place that I want to go, by the way. But you could try doing all that stuff and seeing how it feels to be financially free, and then just get a taste for it, so that way, when you actually are financially free, you have either the vision to get what you want, right, which means it'll happen faster, or you can say, you know what, this isn't really that big of a deal to me. Like, I don't know if I like this very much. Maybe I'll find something else to do with my time.
Yeah, I like that. And I definitely could do like a trial run right now. Definitely could.
Yeah.
I would think Israel would probably be a good bet, although the 7-hour difference is a little bit of a pain in the neck, but
Actually, like, and I'm gonna keep this in the podcast just because I think it was really great, is being able to wake up in the morning and not have any emails because it's midnight in the United States was really, really awesome. And you could enjoy your day in the morning, right? Like in Europe, at least. It may be different in Asia. I think in Asia, your morning will be extremely busy, and then your nights will be free. But I
Right.
think it just comes with like adjusting. And I don't see why you couldn't, in this connected world, be able to swing that. Because what we did was in the morning, like every day, my wife and I, like we had up until 2 o'clock free. So either we were catching up on our business, or we were waiting until 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning in the US to have some of our calls. And of course, we set up Calendly and we did everything so that we were working Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, depending on the needs. And that gave us 4 whole days just to explore the cities where we were going, weeks at a time. And so anyway, we can talk more about that offline if you're interested in that. But yeah, I think it's a cool thing to
Yeah,
consider.
that's cool. That's definitely cool.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and move into the rapid round, which is the same 5 questions that we ask every one of our guests. And we're just going to go ahead and rapidly ask them to you if you're ready for it. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, cool. Each one of these questions is meant to be answered in 30 seconds or less. So, let's get to it. Number 1, what book has had the biggest impact on you and why? And we ask that it not be either the Bible or the Purple Bible, which is Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or his series of books.
I would honestly say that's a good question, but maybe the E-Myth. Is that too cliche, or do you want me to?
No.
Okay.
No, that's a good one. That's a classic that hasn't been mentioned in a while. So I think
And I feel like that should be, I don't know if that's your favorite, but that should probably be on your top 5 also, because I know you're a huge systems guy. So
I am.
probably
Yeah,
right up there
absolutely.
for you too.
Yeah, definitely. It's a really good book for sure. So people who haven't heard of it, you need to go pick that up and check it out. Number 2, if people want to emulate your success, what's the first actionable thing that you think they could do to follow in your footsteps?
Start educating yourself. A lot of the education you can get on real estate is for free. You can find it online. You can find it at real estate, networking events. There's so many of them. There's so many virtual ones. You don't even have to show up. You can go in pajamas,
Totally.
there's so many ways to educate yourself. Start educating yourself and then just like start taking action. Like it's not going to happen unless you roll up your sleeves and start putting in real offers on real deals.
Oh man, love
But
that.
first get that education. Like first, definitely educate yourself.
Yeah, no one's going to do it for you, right? You got to do it for
Exactly.
yourself.
And,
For sure.
you can get caught up. You can get caught up listening to podcasts for a million years, like I did. And you feel like you're moving forward, but you're not actually like moving forward. You're just like
Bingo.
convincing yourself that you're making progress. So this
Yeah.
may be a little over 30 seconds. So I'm gonna cut right here.
No, you're good. You're good. I love it. Number 3, what is one tool, process, or hack in the last 3 to 6 months that you have used, or an app you've downloaded, or anything in your personal or business life that's helped you save time and or effort?
That is a good question. I would say honestly, getting everything organized in Dropbox. I don't know if that's the example you're looking for, but I used to have files flying all over the place, and it used to take me so long to find everything. That's even if I did find something in the first place. And then recently, I just went like put everything in like organized files in Dropbox, and like I have everything labeled, and I know exactly where everything is. And like it may sound like a silly, stupid thing, but like it really helped me just like streamline. It's like less headache, like when you're doing things, like everything just like moves quicker.
Oh yeah.
Where everything is.
Yeah, dude, man, I cannot emphasize how important this is to the audience too, at least for me as someone who likes process and organization. For me to be able to go in there and find something right when I need it, like or be able to search for it. That's the other thing that you can do with these electronic tools. I love that suggestion that you made. So awesome. Good stuff. Number 4, if the people that you know had to describe you with one word, what would that be and why?
So you'd have to ask them.
Of course. Well,
describe me business-wise or personal-wise?
I would say the best you can do to capture both, or whichever you choose.
I would hope it would be something like genuine, like real, genuine. Yeah, I would say, like, I would hope it would be something like that. But again, I could take a survey and let you know later today what they say.
That would be interesting. Actually, that is something I read in a book that is very, very useful to figure out like because it's very easy for us to think about how other people perceive us, but to find out the truth of what people perceive of us is very interesting, and it could be very different than you think. So it might be a very enlightening exercise.
I may be scared to know. I may be scared to find out.
You shouldn't be. I'm sure you've got nothing to worry about. Number 5, what small thing do most people not know about you?
Not real estate related.
Anything.
Let's see. What small thing? That I am taking underhand softball pitching lessons.
That's cool.
I'm assuming most people don't know that about me.
And why is that? Just out of curiosity.
I like softball. I like baseball. I like being athletic. I like the gym. I like being active. And like, I just figured like in softball, underhand softball, like there's so much like of an opportunity if you can actually learn how to pitch the right way. Like so many of the pitchers are just like kind of lobbing the ball and it's pretty easy to hit. I just like, I saw there, like, I realized there to be like an opportunity in this. Like if somebody would actually learn how to pitch the right way, like professionally, and like a lot of these like softball leagues, like they would probably dominate. So that's what I'm doing.
Very cool, man. I love that. I love the goals outside for real estate there. That's pretty neat. Cool stuff. Well, hey man, we could go on for a really long time, but I'm just really thankful to be able to have some time with you to talk about you and your story. And Penny, just want to say thank you for coming on the show. But before you go, and we end the show, I want you to help tell the listeners how they can find out more about you or what you have going on or anything that you want to reach out to the audience with.
Sure. So I'm always happy to connect with people, always happy to talk and meet new investors or wannabe investors or anything like that. So you can get me on my website at plcapitalventures.com. You could email me at penny@plcapitalventures.com. You can find me on LinkedIn at that same name or Facebook. And just send me a DM, message me. I will get back to you as soon as possible, and we'll set something up.
That sounds awesome. Penny, once again, thank you for coming on the show, man. It's been great to have you here.
Derek, it was a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And for you listeners out there who've listened to this point in the podcast, I want to thank you as well. So please, wherever you're listening or watching the podcast, please like, subscribe, comment, just engage with us however you can, so that way we can appease those algorithm gods and get exposure to more and more people out there, just like Penny. And also like you, so that we can connect everyone and add a whole bunch of value on every dimension. So once again, Penny, awesome having you on the podcast. Thank you for coming on. And dear listener, thank you as well for coming on and listening to our fantastic conversations here on the Elevate Your Equity podcast. So until next time, this is Derek. I am signing off, and we'll see you next time. Take care.